Hello, and welcome to the ConstructorCast, your AGC place for all the news, views, and interviews relevant to your construction business. I am your host, Leah Pilconis. This is the 7th recording in our COVID-19 special edition series, where we bring you timely information on factors that construction companies need to consider as they strive for business continuity in these challenging and unprecedented times. We've been releasing a new episode at the start of each week to forecast important actions coming down the pike. So hopefully you can stay a bit ahead of things, and we want to keep you informed of how AGC is involved and representing the interests of the construction industry. I have three of my colleagues with me today to do just that. Welcome, gentlemen. Please take a moment to say hello and introduce yourselves. Jimmy, let's start with you.
Thanks, Leah. Hi, I'm Jimmy Christensen. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs for AGC of America and oversee our Government Relations Department.
Matt, how about you?
Hi, I'm Matthew Turkstra, and I'm the Director of Tax, Fiscal Affairs, and Accounting.
Thanks. And last but not least, Brian.
Sure, it's Brian Termale. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs and Strategic Initiatives for AGC of America. And I can truly say that I'm a longtime listener and a first-time caller, so excited to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. Today is Tuesday, May 12th. And on Capitol Hill, the U.S. House of Representatives is expected to release its next coronavirus relief proposal this week and then vote on it. But there is some disagreement about exactly what the package should look like. Democrats are calling for the federal government to provide substantial aid to states whose budgets have been devastated by economic downturn. Eventually, they'll need to begin talks with the Republican-controlled Senate and the White House. Notably, Senate Majority leaders continue to publicly state that they insist any future coronavirus relief package has to address liability protections for businesses that are seeking to reopen. So, Jimmy, I'm excited to have you here with us today because you really are overseeing all of this and have the insight of the ins and outs of what's going on. Can you please explain to us AGC's top priorities right now and share the outreach and advocacy work that the association is doing in this area?
Sure, Leah, my pleasure. I'll focus first on the liability side and then turn a little bit to the infrastructure side. First, on the liability issues, obviously, construction in many places across the country was considered both safe and essential. As such, we have had a lot of folks out in the field throughout this entire time period. Some job sites might have been shut down that are reopening, but everyone is worried about liability and what possibility there may be for the trial lawyers bar to come after them based on who's been following what rules. This is absolutely concerning from the standpoint that you have many members that are following, whether it be CDC guidelines, their state or local safety guidelines, in addition to any other federal guidelines, trying to do what's right by their employees to get this done in a safe and effective and efficient manner. So what we are focused on is ensuring that the construction companies that are trying to do what's right by their employees and following these guidelines, following social distancing requirements and so forth as they change on any given daily basis, to give them the protections they need to keep doing the good things without risking their company and the jobs of their other employees because of one foul swoop tort lawsuit. So that's been our focus. We've been talking to Senate offices and House offices on this issue. Obviously, the majority leader in the Senate is supportive, and we're looking for you've heard a lot of people talk about a liability shield. And I think that's overblown. Again, like I said, we're focused on ensuring the good actors have the protection they need, not necessarily the bad actors who aren't following any safety regimes. So it's not a shield for everyone. It's just making sure that those that are being grossly negligent and not following an industry recognized or a state or local government safety program as required are the ones that are at risk of this liability. So that's been one of our primary focuses here. And obviously, that's been the red line in the sand for Senate Republicans in this next package. You know, the House, as you said, is looking to put forth their own package. At this point, we could expect to see it by the end of this week. I question whether by the end of this week they can actually get it out and vote on it. But in the interim, this should be seen as the first step in negotiation, where the House Democrats will put out their proposal, and then we'll wait for the volley by the White House and Senate Republicans to say what they think of it. So I don't think that we'll see necessarily a next new CARES Act 2 or Phase 4 or whatever you want to call it for some time. As far as infrastructure is concerned, we've been focused in the House and making sure that we want to see that anything that comes out of this House proposal includes money for infrastructure. Specifically, we're focused on ensuring that state DOTs can get an immediate cash infusion of about $50 billion, so they do not have to delay or postpone any lettings that were planned for this year or the next budget year. Because as we saw with many restaurants and hotels, you know, the industry isn't meant to sustain 6 months without work. And if you have state DOTs that are looking to do that, we're afraid that there's just any sort of large infrastructure package that they put out later, there won't be the companies that are necessary to help build that to be there. We want to ensure that we can get that bridge, and that $50 billion is necessary to ensure that we have the capacity to continue to work for when we get that big, beautiful infrastructure plan. So we were instrumental in getting a letter of over 135 members of the House to sign on calling for that. We recently met with Susan Collins in our Maine chapter and many others. She is the lead appropriator for the Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee in the Senate, and ensuring her support for that. And we'll keep pressing it throughout this process to ensure that the folks on that side of the membership can continue to work, along with looking for opportunities as well for the broader infrastructure package, both on the horizontal and vertical building end, to make sure that there's something for everybody to continue, as we know that markets, especially on the private and the public side, are being pinched.
Jimmy, is there still a call for action letter out that is on our website?
Yes, there's still you're still encouraged to contact your members of Congress on this $50 billion ask for state DOTs to continue projects moving forward. Mm-hmm. And we do also have an ask for the Congress and the administration to fix the PPP program, but I'll leave it to my colleague to talk about what's going on there.
Okay. Thank you for that update. Lots going on. So yes, let's turn to Matt next. I want to talk about the expansion of some parts of the most recent coronavirus relief measure, or what we now call the CARES Act, that may provide construction companies other options for economic assistance during the pandemic. On past episodes, we've talked a lot about the Paycheck Protection Program, which is the loan program intended to keep businesses operational so they can continue to work and pay their employees. But the reality is that it includes a finite amount of money, and the money's almost gone, and businesses are going to continue to need support. So, Matt, I know this is your area of expertise. Can you talk to us about just how much farther can the PPP program carry us? I want your thoughts and your opinion on that. And what are you hearing about the possible expansion of other provisions in the CARES Act, namely the employee retention tax credit program, which the way I understand it, that's like the PPP program because it could help incentivize companies to retain employees under these really tough economic conditions.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. I'll start talking briefly about the PPP program and some of the issues that we've faced with that recently, and then touch on the employee retention tax credit as well. But when the PPP program was created, it was really set out to provide kind of a bridge funding or a bridge loan for employers to maintain their workforce for about 2 months, which at the time that the CARES Act was signed was about what everybody was projecting how long the shutdown would be. And then to make it extra generous, the loan would turn into a grant for those recipients who met certain criteria, spending the money on their workforce and rent and mortgage interest and things like that. As the pandemic has continued and the shutdowns have gone on longer than I think they originally anticipated, the PPP program, at least as it's currently drafted, does create some certain handcuffs within the recipients who get it. They have to use the money within a set amount of time from when they receive it. It's only good for 8 weeks, which if you're looking out from 2 months to now, the economy may not be up and running at full speed, and things like that. In addition to that, there have been a number of public statements by the Treasury Secretary and some congressional leaders suggesting that loan recipients would undergo a great deal of scrutiny, subject to False Claims Act lawsuits, and also that every person who receives a loan would then be potentially made public. And kind of all these have contributed to a drop in the demand for the PPP loan program just in the past week and a half or so. The SBA was originally clearing about $50 billion worth of loans per day, which is an astounding figure. So over the past about 10 days or so, they've averaged clearing about a 1.5 billion per day. So it's been a pretty dramatic fall off. And as a result, I think people are starting to look at ways to either revise the PPP loan program to make it more attractive, or to explore some additional relief that may be either equally beneficial or more beneficial. One of those is as you mentioned, is the employee retention tax credit. That was created in the CARES Act, and it didn't get a lot of attention at the time. But it provided about a 50% tax credit to employers for up to $10,000 in wages paid out from March to the end of the year. And so basically about $5,000 per employee. It was a fairly significant amount of money, and there's a distinction between employers who have 100 employees or less, or 100 employees or more, or greater than 100 employees, and if you have over 100 employees, it's only applicable to employees who have been out of work. Whereas if you have fewer than that, assuming that your company has been shut down and meets the criteria or eligibility criteria for the program, then it applies to all your employees. There's some talk that in the next CARES Act legislation that we would see from the Democrats, hopefully this week, that program will be expanded upon. There's been some bipartisan legislation introduced by Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy from Florida, along with Congressman John Katko from New York, and a few other members, that would increase the credit from 50% to 80%, raise the amount of money, or the cap on wages from $10,000 to $45,000 per year. So it's a fairly substantial increase in that in the amount of money that would be available to employers. Now, as to whether that legislation gets into the bill, without any changes, is an open question. We'll have to wait and see. But that may be a more powerful tool for employers as they're looking for different options for relief as the economy continues to struggle to get up and running.
That's another key priority area for AGC, another thing that we're looking closely at.
Yeah, as I think what we need to learn some more about the program, I have to imagine the price tag for what was introduced by Congresswoman Murphy is going to be quite high. And we are dealing with a situation of kind of limited resources. There's a lot of demands on the Treasury right now between, as Jimmy mentioned, money for states, money for state DOTs, relief for employers, potentially additional stimulus checks for individuals, and I'd imagine the price tag is going to get pretty high pretty quickly. So they'll have to be pretty judicious in how they tailor these programs so that we don't have the price tag isn't too high on the backside.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure you're going to be tracking that closely, and we'll continue to report on things as they develop. So thanks for that update, Matt. So what you just heard was basically a quick legislative outlook and a review of AGC's government affairs work kind of at the moment. Like I said, we'll continue to provide updates as things evolve, but we have so much else going on as our national staff of almost 70 people. We're continuing to work every day, each of us working from our own individual homes to provide you with resources and information to keep your people safe and healthy and keep your businesses going. So, like I said, last but not least, we've got Brian Termail with us, and he's a spokesperson for AGC National. And I want him to give us a rundown of what you can keep an eye out for, things that we're also working on this week and into the next week ahead.
Sure, and thanks, Leah. It is yet another busy week for AGC for events coming out of Washington, and hopefully a busy week for the industry. A few things, and I was trying to think about these in chronological order. One is, and just to sort of go back in time a little bit, is that, of course, last Friday, AGC released the results of the 6th edition of our coronavirus survey. We've had over 800 members respond to it, and that really gives us a lot of good information and detail that Jimmy and Matt and their team can use up on the Hill, that we can use to educate the media about what's going on, and we can educate you, the industry, about what's happening really across the country with the construction sector. Unfortunately, the jobs numbers that came out last Friday showed that the industry lost 975,000 workers, so nearly a million workers, which was, I think, nothing short of gut-wrenching. But AGC's chief economist does provide some really, I think, insightful analysis of those survey results, and some exploration of those jobs numbers and what they mean for the industry. And we've been working to put together a brief, about 2-minute, minute and a half video from that chief economist, Ken Simonson, that folks can watch. The most recent one, which we put out on Friday, is available if you just go to the coronavirus website or page that we've created on the AGC website. If you go right to the main page at agc.org and you click on the COVID updates, you'll see right there a link to the Ken's video, those employment data, and some other interesting data that we put out there. And it's just kind of a good way to get caught up on what's going on with the industry and where might be some silver linings in that data. Moving forward this week, I think we have 2 significant developments going on tomorrow. First, of course, is that we'll be releasing the next in our series of weekly safety tips. Our safety team has been putting out new tips each week, really since we did that nationwide safety stand down in early April. And the idea here is to just provide a constant stream of content that members can use as they constantly reinforce with their teams the need to comply with all those safety procedures. As Jimmy talked about, the ingredient of that is making sure that firms are taking every possible step to protect their workers and the community from the spread of the coronavirus. And these safety tips are just designed to give you more information and another reason to go back with your teams and really kind of make sure everyone is following the new protocols that are out there. Also tomorrow, AGC will be releasing its Culture of Care program. For those of you who are with us in Vegas in early March, you heard a lot of talk about a new Culture of Care program. Basically, it's a set of guidelines and a commitment that we're asking member firms to sign up for on expanding the diversity of their workforce and also creating a climate that is more welcoming of folks from different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultures, different values into your job site. And as we think it's an even more relevant program today, given the fact that frankly we're all a little stressed out, we're all a little worried about what's going on, and we're all coming into the workplace bringing the anxieties from our house with us. So we think it's a particularly timely program. There's a lot of great resources in Culture of Care on how firms can help folks cope with that stress and again create a more welcoming environment, a place where folks will feel comfortable showing up and contributing their best ideas. If nothing else, we see from the recent economic data that firms are going to need to take every possible step to be as efficient, as productive, and as profitable as possible, and hoping that Culture of Care will help. And then just kind of rounding out the week on Thursday is the revised federal deadline, of course, for firms that may be considering returning those Paycheck Protection Program loans. Originally, the deadline was May 7th, but after Jimmy, Matt, and the team really weighed in forcefully with the Treasury officials, they did give a 1-week extension, and that deadline is the 14th. And that's a decision that folks obviously need to make based on their analysis of the situation. And then one other helpful resource that's out there as people think about those Paycheck Protection Program loans, also up on our coronavirus website, we've actually created a packet of information that really documents what market conditions were like in March and April when many firms were making those PPP loan requests, so that they can document just how dire economic circumstances were and how reasonable it was to have expected a downturn in the market that in fact we saw with those new April employment figures. So a lot of information. Just, best thing that members can do is obviously watch this podcast, check for our regular coronavirus updates, check that website and the coronavirus page. And if they haven't downloaded that AGC Connection app yet, you should definitely do that. That's a great place where we can just push that information to you.
All righty.
Leah.
Woo! Amazing stuff.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's awesome. I knew about it, and it still is incredibly impressive to hear it all. So www.agc.org/coronavirus sounds like the #1 place to check for a lot of the resources that you just mentioned. I know you update that page regularly. So lots of really good tools and resources. I think that wraps up this episode of AGC's ConstructorCast. Thank you all for the information that you shared. Thanks everyone on the other end for listening. Please subscribe to ConstructorCast from your podcast app, or you can stream all available episodes right from your computer at www.agc.org/ConstructorCast.